So I've made no changes. I just shared this link on the SIG Storage Cozy channel in Slack. And so this is what we looked at Thursday, but maybe, I know Ben, you had said you'd like it to soak a little bit. And so hopefully there's been a chance for that to happen. And maybe you see some issues with it, but so this is it. And is there anyone here that wasn't present Thursday for the Thursday Cozy meeting?
I don't think so.
No. Okay. So I don't need to go over that again because you've heard it. And so I guess we can just start a discussion, Sid, unless you had any specific
Yeah,
thing
I
you want
did.
to go over.
Yeah. So I just want to go over the entire life cycle one more time, because by doing that exercise, we also bring to light, or others might have a different perspective on it, and they might ask new questions. So I just want to go through the exercise once of how things work. So user creates a BR, correct?
Yep.
And then there's also a BC associated with it that the admin tells them.
Yep.
And once the BR is created with a valid BC, the controller goes and creates a bucket object.
Yes.
All right. And then the sidecar responds to the creation of the bucket object by going and creating the backend bucket.
Yep.
All right. Okay. Now, BAR lifecycle is similar, where when a BAR is created, the admin has to let the user know of a BAC.
Yep.
And the controller responds to that by creating a BA object with the policy actions config map from the BAC. And then the provisioner uses the BA to go ahead and provision the access for that bucket. So there is admin involved in 2 steps actually.
Correct.
Yeah.
We're Greenfield.
What do you mean admin is involved in 2 steps?
They would have to let the user know of the BC name and then the BAC name.
Right, but that's kind of that's a one-time upfront step the admin performs.
Yeah.
It's needed for 2 things, but it's still one. You don't have to do it at 2 separate times.
True.
You
The admin can create a bunch of them up front and yeah.
Right, and the admin may have already created this BC and BAC a year ago, but some mechanism needs to exist to communicate the name to the user, who presumably can't see.
No, the user can see stuff. User can see storage classes and volume snapshot classes. Why wouldn't they be able to see these classes?
Here, okay, if that's typical that the users can see those resources, then that's fine.
Yeah.
Then the user just needs a way. If there's 100 of them, the user needs to know which one they're supposed to pick. So if they can see,
well, I don't even agree with that. But you can list them and you can see all of their details, and you can decide which one you want to pick.
Right.
If they have full read access, they can see more than just the name. They can see the content. Then they can look at the driver.
Yeah, that's the whole point, is that these things are globally readable. So all of the details that a user might want to use to decide which one he wants, he can access himself and make that decision.
Yeah.
And furthermore, there's no restrictions, right? Anyone you can see, you can use.
Right. Especially for the classes, yes. Because the classes don't have an identity to them. So it's fine even if you see what all is there.
Yeah.
So how about given that, now that I think about it, it is technically possible to create a bunch of preset of classes, say for access, a bunch of preset access policies for AWS, for S3, like read only bucket or read write bucket or write only bucket or just those three actually. We can actually create that upfront for the user, so that admin doesn't even have to get involved if it's one of these standard classes.
Right. Assuming region, assuming the parameters field is generic enough. I mean, we've thought there may be some specifications in parameters map that would be specific for.
Yeah, they can always override it. This is more for convenience. Again, it's technically possible is all I'm saying. Should we do it is my question.
Yeah, I don't know. I think your main point just was said that is there's two steps that an admin has to do one time so that we can do a greenfield use case, which is the admin has to create a bucket class and create a bucket access class. It is a one-time thing, like Ben said, and thank you, Ben, and it's discoverable, which is nice.
Yeah, that's true. It is discoverable. Yeah. All right, so that makes sense. So how does a credential revoke work? Just the same way, right? As usual.
Yes, no changes in that part.
Right. Okay. And bucket deletion?
So we covered this a little Thursday, but the BR, deleting the BR triggers a bucket deletion. Where we got into some discussion was the case of a forced delete. Like if I delete the BR and regardless of other accessors or other workloads that might be using the same B instance or the same physical bucket, we're going to just yank the rug out. We're going to force delete. The other idea was a delete when all accessors have completed type mode, and then the other retained. So we talked about that a little Thursday. I have updated the KEP to reflect that in that same PR that's been out there for a few weeks. And
so you're talking about deletion policies.
Yeah, I renamed it to deletion policy instead of retention policy.
But you went ahead and added a third flavor in addition to the two that are obvious. Okay.
Yes. So I called it delete, and I think that's the default. Retain, and those are what. But delete means delete when all accessors are done. And I have a forced delete, which means delete it, now essentially.
Okay, I guess I would quibble about the choice, because for symmetry with other things, like delete should mean force delete, and the hang around till all accessors are gone should probably get a different name, because that doesn't exist anywhere else in Kubernetes.
It does, right? Like if you do a pod delete or deployment delete, it's actually a non-forced delete unless you set -- force to true. So
that was my thinking also, Sid, on the way I structured the names.
Yeah, Jeff, your email is open.
What can prevent a pod from going away when you delete it?
What can, sorry, repeat that?
Like when I delete a pod, it always goes into the deleting states, and as soon as all the finalizers are gone, it disappears. Like you never need to do force delete. Force delete is about overriding the finalizers, I think.
No, it doesn't remove the finalizers actually. So force delete is so pods can handle SIGTERM and SIGINT. So if they start handling and not terminating, you can do a force delete.
I really thought force delete was about something else, because that's a Kubernetes API level command. It's like when you send the delete verb to the HTTP or to the REST API.
Oh, you're right. You're right.
Like
because PVCs can be force deleted.
Yeah, and you can delete pods on nodes that are down using force delete, to my recollection.
It doesn't wait for it to end then. But with pods specifically, I know there is one thing where there's a grace period, right? The grace period says wait so long before sending a SIG kill.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this is not an essential part of it, but I think we need to be careful about the semantics here, just because I'm pretty sure that the regular delete typically means like blow it away, you know, now, and then if you want some sort of a, you know, tag it for garbage collection kind of a semantic, I don't think that exists elsewhere in Kubernetes. This pod behavior notwithstanding, I think the pod behavior is more subtle than you're suggesting that it is. Pretty much when you tell Kubernetes to delete something, like the API server just deletes it, and then it goes and starts doing the finalizer behavior. There is no concept of like the API server receiving a delete and not, well, if you delete the BR, then the controller has to reflect that in the B, and I guess, and that's when the delete policy gets interpreted. So I don't know.
What do we do? Okay, so let's say the deletion is let's let's not talk about forced delete yet. Just talk about normal delete. What do we do in that case? So let's say a bucket is you know, marked for deletion.
Yeah. So what'll happen is the user will delete his BR. It will
Mhm.
have a finalizer on it that got put on the moment the controller saw it and bound it to the B. And so the Kube API server will put it into deleting immediately, but because it has that finalizer, it'll linger. The controller will, you know, get an update with its informer and see this thing once should be deleted now. And so that's its opportunity to turn around and execute an action on the B and then remove its finalizer. And so if it's delete, like one would expect, it would delete the B and then remove its finalizer from the BR. And at that point, the BR would go away. And then at that point, the only thing keeping it alive is any finalizers on the B, which would be owned by the sidecar, presumably, because the sidecar needs to also see the B getting deleted, so it knows to go tell the driver, please delete this thing.
Right.
And once it gets a successful response, then it can remove its finalizer from the B, and then the B goes away too.
Yeah, and there's a lot of finalizers on a B.
Well, yeah.
Well, we only need one.
Yeah.
No,
we need one for the provisioner, and we might need one for any accessors that are coming into access. But as you know, I was never happy with the proposal to have like a finalizer per pod or anything like that.
No finalizers per pod. You're right. Yeah.
So we should have a small fixed number of finalizers, like 2 or 3, maybe, for, and each one has a purpose, which is some controller needs to see the deletion event, wake up, do whatever it's going to do in response to the deletion event, and then remove its finalizer.
Yeah.
I think you want a finalizer per BA.
Yeah, yeah.
Why?
Otherwise, you wouldn't know all the different accesses of it. We talked about this. Like you said, we could just list and find out who all the BAs that are using it. The issue was the sidecar, which would have to do the listing, would not have access to all the BAs, or whoever was supposed to do it would not be able to do it.
Well, I know at one point we thought the workload, the pod, there'd be a finalizer that named the pod, I think, or something on a B, but I guess it sounds like that's been changed. The reason for a BA finalizer on the B is that it would that seems like an easy way to understand accessors. So in a forced delete, you have to just remove all BA finalizers, but in a non-forced delete, the B wouldn't go away till the final BA was deleted, right?
Yeah, so Chris was implementing this.
And the final BA is not deleted till the final BAR is deleted.
Oh, Jeff, I didn't follow that last part. Okay, so I want to ask Krish a question. Sorry, Jeff, I'll get back to that. So Krish, are you there?
Yeah.
So I remember you implemented the finalizer addition on the BA bucket object, right?
Yeah, I believe so. I think it was a little while ago, right?
Right. So I think what you were doing was creating a finalizer for every accessor, right? Or was it per pod, or was it per bucket access?
Let me see. I think it was per bucket access.
Right, that makes sense. Okay, I just wanted to verify that. So it's not per pod, which is the right way. Now, what Ben was saying. So if you don't have a finalizer per bucket access, Ben, then how do we know all the different accesses for the bucket?
So well, what you would do is you would have an informer to list all the bucket accessors in the or the bucket all the BAs in the provisioner sidecar, and it would have a single finalizer that it would put on at the first time it saw the bucket. And if the bucket was in the deleting state, it would validate that there are no BAs referring to it before removing its finalizer. And it would do that by always at all times knowing all of the BAs. And you would have to have a rule that said you can't bind a BA to a B when it's deleting, so that
Right, that's what I was
so
going
that the number of bucket accesses can increase while it's not deleted, but once it's deleted, it can only decrease. And once it hits 0, you remove the finalizer, and you're guaranteed then to reliably delete it only when the number of BAs reaches 0, and you're guaranteed to eventually hit that point because you can't add any more, and so you just wait for them all to get deleted.
Let's say you're trying to delete a BA, and let's say there are 10 pods using that BA. Do we have
That's a different question. I mean, that they're in order to play the same game, you would need to have the informer that's watching the BA or the controller that's watching the BAs be able to enumerate the pods. But as we've discussed,
that's a
there
security issue?
there are concerned. Well, I don't think it's a security problem, but there's a scaling issue.
That too.
So I think we hit a similar issue in CSI where I believe one of the sidecars must watch the pods, and there were concerns about how well that scales, but I don't think there's an alternative. I think you just suck it up and do it.
Well, the alternative is to have a finalizer per pod. Just sounds a
But
little
I
ridiculous.
don't think anyone has seriously considered that on the CSI side. I think the answer is always you have one finalizer and you watch the things you need to watch to know when it's safe to remove that finalizer.
Yeah, and you can list pods by some label filters or whatever, so it should be okay, I guess.
Well, I mean, yeah. So the two approaches you could take are, one, you could just have an informer that would show you all the pod events, and you could have a comprehensive notion of all the pods at any given time, or you could just in time do a selector, a list with selector on the pods to just get the ones you need to know. I don't know what would be more efficient, but
So
it seems like that's an
informer.
implementation detail.
Yeah.
That there's multiple ways of doing it with one finalizer. It's just a question of which one is best. I don't think we would want to go to the place where you have multiple finalizers, just because then you're putting a lot of pressure on the finalizer system, which we know has problems, right?
Like what?
No. We also looked into this, right? We looked into the maximum object size in etcd, and it's actually in the megabytes. So the number of you could add thousands of finalizers before you would kill etcd.
Right.
But I don't know where else in Kubernetes something like that is done. I think typically you just have one finalizer.
Yeah, I understand where you're coming from. I was just trying to understand the reason behind CSI not using this finalizer method. Like, was it just not thought of, which I'd be surprised if it was the case.
We should ask people who would know more about that. We should go into one of the CSI meetings, which unfortunately just happened in the previous hour. And have this discussion about, is there ever a case where we create like a linear number of finalizers, or is it always a constant number of finalizers, and then we just implement the logic to know when to remove them?
Right.
But I stand by my belief that it's possible to do it with one, and the only kinds of problems you're going to run into are going to be security and scaling issues potentially.
And races,
and
right?
no, I really don't believe there's a potential for races. If you can prevent things from binding when they're in the deleting state, then that eliminates any possibility of a race. So
Yeah, that
you
is
just have to have
possible. It is
you just have to
possible to
have a
prevent binding.
you just have to have a check that prevents a BA from binding to a B when one or both of them are being deleted, and that gets you out of any race trouble.
Makes sense. And that is possible. It is possible to prevent binding.
Yeah, I mean, I that seems like an obvious thing to do, to check whether it's deleting
of course,
before acting on it.
Yeah. For both BAs and Bs, it would be the same thing.
But then let me make sure I understand why you don't like the finalizer approach, say a list of finalizers, one per BA. We're talking about finalizers on the B. And the reason you're saying is that you think that it might not scale well, right?
Well, I mean, I haven't seen it elsewhere, and I'm just imagining typing like kubectl get and seeing like a screen full of finalizers at the top of the object and thinking like, what the heck is going on here?
Well, managed fields wins that. I mean, it takes up more space than anything else.
I know managed fields drives everybody nuts.
Yeah.
But
is that the main? Well, what's your main concern about a list of finalizers though? Is it scaling or is it something else?
It's just that it's not done elsewhere, I think, and it feels like the wrong pattern to follow. That's all I can say. Like I can't think of anything that will specifically break, but maybe if I thought about it for a while, I would come up with something.
Yeah.
We addressed
I also have not seen any pattern like this before. I think it's normally it's like a limited number, a small number of finalizers.
Yeah,
normally.
a small constant number is what you typically see.
Not like a list that you don't really know how many there are. And
because I think we established that storage is not going to be an issue. You know, etcd can handle a large number of finalizers.
But I think the updates, right? Every update you need to do an API update.
I have read that if you update metadata a lot, that's expensive, and I don't remember the reason though.
Well, every time you touch an object, it's everything. All the informers that are watching it will get
and then you get triggered
notified.
by that, right? So I think there'll be races. I would think there would be races if you have to update that so frequently.
But we're going to be updating these objects anyways when we add things. So I don't know. I guess I'll reserve judgment on this. Maybe we can look into it more deeply. I would just rather have the same problem everyone else has rather than inventing new problems for ourselves.
Fair enough. It just seems like an easy solution. So yeah. But coming back to
there is one other small issue that I have noticed that I think is surmountable, but it's tricky, which is modifying like patching the list of finalizers like when it is large is tricky because there is no you want to stay away from doing object updates. Typically you want to use patches because updates can cause issues when you version an API. If you add a new field and you call update, it can erase a field that somebody else has populated, and that's bad. So we try to use patches. And the problem is whenever you patch an array of JSON, like you can't just, there's no way in a patch command to say like append one element or remove one element. Like what you have to do is you have to say, this is what I think the old contents are, and this is what I want the new contents to be.
That's it. But that'll be arrays regardless. Whether you're using 2 finalizers or n finalizers, that can still be arrays.
Well, no, if you do it correctly, you can use a JSON patch with a test statement in it that specifies, like, I believe the current list of finalizers is A, B, C, D, and I'm removing C, so I want the new list of finalizers to be A, B, D. And then if anyone else adds E, your patch will fail and you'll have to retry. Or if anyone else modifies the list in any other way, like you can set up a JSON patch to fail, but you have to do it pretty carefully. And I don't believe most pieces of Kubernetes handle this right. So if you have two mutations to the finalizer list that come in very close together, it's possible for one to clobber the other. It's just hard to patch lists in Kubernetes.
Yeah, no, anywhere actually. If you're trying to update a list, it's kind of tricky. Tell me, Ben, what is the issue with doing updates again?
So the problem with an update is if you have like, if you ship a version of Cozy that's like V1,
Alpha one. Mm-hmm.
and then let's say we get through alpha, beta, we're on V1, right? Then we decide, oh, we want to add a new feature, right? Well, we can't go to V2. So what are we going to do? We're just going to add a new optional field to the schema. So it's allowed to be empty, but you can populate it. And then new controllers will start populating this field and using it. The problem is any old controller that is still on the previous version that doesn't have the new field will always omit that field when it sends updates.
Right.
Regardless, because it doesn't know about the field. So if you have a combination of old controllers and new controllers interacting with the new object, old controllers will just always delete the contents of that field whenever they do an update, and that's bad. So we basically never do updates on an object which could potentially evolve over time, because of the possibility that in the next version we'll add a field that we don't know about in this version.
Wow, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
But this typically only matters once you get to like stable, because as long as you're on like alpha, you can have V1 alpha 1, V1 alpha 2, V1 alpha 3. You can handle all this with versioning. Once you get to V1, you have nowhere to go, and you get stuck. And so you either have to agree you're never ever going to add a field, in which case updates are safe, or if you do want the possibility of adding new optional fields, you have to stay away from updates.
Or go to V2.
Or go to V2, but nobody does that.
Yeah. I think the answer is V2. Yeah. I don't see another way out of this actually.
Well, no, I mean, the way we do it everywhere else is we just don't use updates. We always patch, so that if you did add a new optional field, it's not a problem.
Any good reason why we don't go to V2?
Just, I don't know, backwards compatibility, I guess. Like the moment you go to V2, all the workloads that are coded for V1 stop working.
I mean, that depends on how you do the CRD configuration, right? Like you can have both. You can have a conversion webhook that moves.
Oh, well, okay. Yeah. If you play that whole game, yes, you could, in theory, help people migrate, but that's a very expensive migration process.
It is expensive, yeah.
Because eventually everyone will have to move to V2,
right?
And you will have to deprecate V1 and drop it. And in the transition, you can make the transition smoother, but it forces all of your clients to do work. And so the principle in Kubernetes is, once the clients have done their work, never ever force them to change. Let them keep working the way that they were. So
yeah.
That's
if they
sort
stick with the same version of Kubernetes, it'll be the same. But if they want to do an upgrade, they'll probably have to like start dealing with the deprecation.
But like Kubernetes is on V1.20, well, V1.20, and like pods and all the basic APIs are still V1 after 19 revs. So like there's a strong desire to stay on V1, because the moment something moves to V2, anything that was coded over the last 19 releases will now have to be changed. And like, there's just a vast amount of code that works that they don't want to break.
Fair enough. Okay. So I understand that. Now let's talk about forced deletes. So we still don't have an understanding of how do we differentiate between normal deletes and forced deletes. So if the deletion policy is retained, there's no problem here. We just go away, and the BR just goes away. And if there is a finalizer associated with the BR on the B, that gets taken out. Is that right?
Yeah. So when the user deletes his BR and the controller wakes up and sees that deletion event, he'll consult the deletion policy on the B, and if it says retain, he'll say, "Oh, I have no work to do," drop the finalizer, and go back to sleep. And then the BR will disappear, and the B will just sit there. That would be how retain. That's how it is with snapshots, right, Sheng? If you have a volume snapshot content with retain and the user deletes the volume snapshot, your content just hangs around.
Right.
But the
Okay.
volume snapshots finalizer, there should be a finalizer for the volume snapshot on the
There
content.
are there are finalizers.
That gets
Yeah,
taken out,
so
right? Like,
It
Yeah,
will
the-
be removed depending on if you're
the snapshot
Yeah.
controller will remove it, and then the volume snapshot will go away, but the volume snapshot content just continues on, and so the sidecar never sees anything happen.
got it. Okay, so then talking about forced deletes or normal deletes, for a normal delete, when someone removes the BR, do we mark the B as deleting, like say set the deletion timestamp, and wait for the sidecar to go delete the actual backend bucket? Well, we have to wait for all the BAs to stop using the B.
I mean, with the regular deletion, you just the controller that does the bucket binding would call delete on the B, which puts it into the deleting state, and then removes finalizer, and then go back to sleep, and the BR would just disappear at that point, and he's done. Because now all you have to do is wait for all the finalizers on the B to go away, and then Kube API server will delete that too, and then
Yes.
Yep. Right, and one of the things that is holding a finalizer is the sidecar that has to delete the bucket.
Yeah.
And so what you can do is you could make that sidecar do something before calling delete, which is go look at any accessors for that bucket and wait for them to go away.
Yeah.
But again, I would say like if the user wanted to delete it, like they should be able to.
Like force delete, yeah. So,
I don't like calling that force delete because that's what regular delete is everywhere else. It's
unprovisioned, like you're saying, you're not really deleting it, but we're making it unusable by others. That's what we're doing. The other normal delete. What we were calling normal delete versus force delete. You're saying
normal delete still didn't work that way. Like on PVCs, I can't delete a PVC that is being used, right? So normal deletes don't yank the rug out from my observation.
Yeah, but PVCs are different though. PVCs are more wired, at the system level into the pod, whereas buckets don't have the same limitation.
Well, they're sort of wired in. I mean, less for sure. I agree with what you said about PVCs, but we are going to have the volume, the CSI driver spec, or the CSI volume portion of a pod that will reference the BA.
Well, yeah. So I don't disagree that yeah, with PVCs and pods, if you have a pod, it can keep your PVC alive, even if you intended to delete it. It'll just sit there until the pod goes away. Like that is an object that is in the same namespace that in principle the user can also delete if he really wants his thing to go away. So you never have a situation where the user intended to delete something and now he can't do it because he has control over deleting it. So in the Jeff, your slide disappeared, but
I'm not sharing it. That's why.
Yeah. I guess what I worry about with our new scheme is there a situation where like now I intend to delete something and I no longer can because other namespaces are holding on to it? And I think the answer is yes.
Yes.
Well, hold on. So is deletion as important as, so if you want to revoke access, we can facilitate that. But is it important that you delete the data also? Like, can we not wait for I mean, what I'm saying is an admin can forcibly revoke access. So say deletion is being held back by accessors, then all the admin has to do is forcibly revoke access. Once that is done, that is like admin going and saying manually, I'm forcibly pulling the rug out from underneath these workloads. And then once all the BAs are taken out, we can delete it.
Right, but we want to be thinking about the self-service. I mean, anytime an admin has to get involved, something's already gone wrong, typically. So like in the normal course of events, a user should be able to delete everything he created.
Right.
And the exception to that here is if it has been shared to another namespace, right?
Right.
So as long as the bucket is in my namespace only, then my BAs that are keeping it alive are under my control, and I can wipe those out by deleting my BARs, and then the bucket goes away.
Yes.
The problem is that somebody else can get a BA pointing to it, and now that other guy can prevent me from deleting my bucket. And
That's
if
true.
I'm being charged for it, or if it's affecting my quota or any of those things, like now I can't. Now I'm stuck, right? Now
Yeah,
I have to
but
pay
the
for this
minute you
other guy.
chose to share it, the minute
Well,
you
right.
chose,
So that's the thought exercise I wanted to go through. Is is it reasonable to say that like there's a point at which I passed where I gave up ability to delete my bucket willingly, and
yeah, it's like an assumed loss of ability to delete. Um, because once you start sharing, only the admin can have the full context of who is sharing and how they're using it.
Yeah, right. To Ben's point, if when he talks about I or me, the user didn't authorize sharing of that bucket. The admin did.
Hmm.
So what Ben said is true. It's an interesting point. Let's say just left side namespace 1. I've done all those things. It's all under my control. And if there was no namespace 2 in that diagram, I have full control of the life of that bucket, right? I can delete my BR, I can delete my BARs, and those will trigger the right deletions and the bucket goes away. As soon as the admin tells some user in namespace 2 the name of bucket 1, and that user creates BAR3 in this diagram, I've lost now, unknowingly, potentially, I've lost that ability to manage my own resources that I caused to be created, right?
yeah.
You're saying that.
I mean,
But-
is it unknowingly is the question. If it is unknowingly, it's a problem. But what if
Well,
it's,
how do I know that the admin told someone else the name of bucket 1?
well, when you create a bucket, the BC, has a list of allowed namespaces. So you know it can be shared, but let's say
Well, that's true. I guess if the list of allowed namespaces is greater than mine,
one.
yeah, greater than 1, then it can be shared potentially, but I don't know it has been shared.
Well, I think so. So the reason I get worried about situations like this is if B1 is charging my credit card or like costing me quota, then it's my inability to delete it is a problem for me, right? If it's costing the admin, if it's charging the admin's credit card, then I don't care as much if I can't delete it because it's not my problem.
Yeah, but we're assuming that we can never talk to the admin in that case. I think it's reasonable to say if you do end up in a situation where it's getting to that point where you created a bucket knowingly that can be shared, and now you want to get it out but you can't, then you talk to the admin.
yeah, I guess I would want to think through the quota use cases because we have situations with like quotas on PVCs where like I create a PVC and it deducts my quota, and if I try to create another PVC, the quota system can actually veto that operation and say, sorry, you've used up all your PVC quota. So like if we had something similar here, I believe what would happen is the moment your BR went away, your quota would be replenished, regardless of the existence of the bucket, because it's not my bucket anymore. Once I delete my BR, I've basically said I'm done with it. I don't have any references to it. So I would like to use my quota now to go create more buckets.
I mean, the
And if
quota system has to work along with this model, right? It's not the same as PVs.
Well, yeah, I wanted to just make sure we're not creating a situation where you can have like, first of all, where you could game the quota system, or where I could get stuck with my quota is being consumed and I can't get it back by deleting my stuff, right? Those are the two bad cases.
Yeah.
And I would think that any quotaing would be on BRs, and it would be on the namespace things, the BRs and the BARs. And if I delete all of my BRs and BARs, then all my quotas would go back to normal, and I could go off and create other objects. And I don't worry about the non-namespace stuff. That's someone else's problem.
Right.
Yes, I don't think this would trigger a quota problem, but I do agree that it creates that credit card problem you said. S3, Amazon's going to charge you as long as the physical bucket is still there, right? And so I don't know how Sid said, well, you solve that by asking the admin to, delete, say, BA3. And so now there's no accessors to the bucket and it can go away. or you change the deletion policy to whatever, delete or force delete, whatever we want to mean, yank the rug out, and it can go away. So there are recourses, but it seems to be that the user has to ask for help now.
Yeah. I think I've managed to talk myself into agreeing that we can call it delete and force delete and make delete the default and make it wait for BAs to go away. I would not be surprised though if the API reviewers revisit this and say, no, we don't like that. But I think I'm okay with it. Because
I like it better myself, but we'll see what the API. I'm with you on that, Ben. I like delete to be a soft delete essentially, and explicitly say yank the rug out with force delete.
Yeah.
I think we're going to need a different name other than force delete.
That's what I was getting to.
Because force delete means something at the API server
purge
level, and that's not what we're
force
talking
delete should
about.
be called purge.
Huh?
Because you're taking the data out whether someone's using it or not. So delete is a normal delete. And then let's say you have purge set to true. So deletion policy can be delete, retain, or purge.
The problem with that is purge and the existence of purge implies that delete doesn't purge it, but it does, right?
Sure.
I wouldn't want to lead people to believe that like you have to purge it if you want it to go away. Delete will purge it just after everyone's done with it. So we'll have to wordsmith the name, but yeah, I think we could come up with something. Not force delete, not purge, but maybe delete immediate or something, or delete.
Lazy delete versus immediate delete.
Sure. Okay. Maybe. Yeah.
Because that's what unmount semantics looks like. So you can umount -L or you can umount -FL. Well, F, which is force. Like even if someone's using it, if there are open FDs and all that, you still force unmounted. Or umount -L, which is the mount point itself stops showing up, but then it doesn't unmount until all the writes are complete.
Mm-hmm.
So
it's just a name. We can pick something, but we understand the concept behind the names.
Well, this is an API that users are going to use. I think the naming is very important here.
Well, I agree with that, but I don't think the naming of these delete modes affects an evaluation of this proposal.
Right. We agree we can find a name that we're happy with and proceed with just the design. So, but getting back to the original question that you asked 45 minutes ago, having sort of marinated in this idea, I still don't see any problems. So I'm feeling better about this proposal overall.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, so this is good. Let's then on Thursday, let's bring it up again and in support of this, and see what others also have to say. And if we get no pushbacks, then we should update the KEP to show this. And in terms of development, I think the effort is not too high, so we can take care of that also. Because the normal workflow is the same as what was already there for Greenfield within the namespace, and we haven't really implemented the sharing part yet. So I think we're in good shape there.
Right.
All right, let's do that. We have 13 minutes left. We don't have to necessarily spend the 13 minutes. Unless someone wants to bring anything up, I think we can end the meeting now. Does anyone have any questions?
Well, are we resolved that we're going to follow up with the CSI guys about the multiple finalizer thing and see what their feeling is? Because that's still...
It's an implementation detail. Yeah.
It's interesting, Ben. I hadn't thought of your argument about using the concern about finalizers. We should do that, but I don't think it affects whether we have a agreement on this API change.
Oh, right. That's also orthogonal to this specific proposal.
But it's an
But-
important concern. Yeah, I think we should do that, Ben. So I'll join one of the meetings and I'll put this question forward, asking why or if this approach was even considered, or what they think of this approach, because I think it'll be interesting to hear what they have to say.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's an implementation detail though, like you said, Jeff, and it doesn't affect evaluation of your proposal.
Right.
Yeah. All right. So any other questions?
Are you
Okay.
going to start? You have the what is that? The office hour the next Monday? Is that the plan?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the plan. Well, next Monday, what we'll do is I'll be having my terminal open and answer questions about how to set up, how to do particular things, or if someone's adding code, like what kind of conventions we follow, stuff like that even.
Okay. Sounds
Yeah.
good. And you're going to announce that somewhere on the Slack?
Yeah.
on
I'll put it on the
email as well, I think.
yeah, the email, the Slack, yeah, everywhere, and also announce in the next meeting.
Okay. Sounds
Yeah.
good.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.